Welcome back, everybody, to the Chips and Bits podcast.
Woo!
Your favorite video game podcast. I'm your host this month, Matthew Anderson, saving you all from another terrible intro from my best bud in the whole world.
Oh, Kenny Myers. Also, this
Kenny
isn't
Myers.
this isn't our serial killer podcast.
Nope, not yet.
That's Chips of Skin, not Chips and Bits.
We got to get some more sponsors first.
That's true.
Fortunately, it's no longer 1,000,000 degrees in Seattle, so I'm happy to be here to talk about horror games with you.
Happy to be here to talk about weather too. Like I haven't gotten enough of it from everyone who doesn't live in Seattle.
Yeah, totally.
People come out of the woodwork to see if you're okay.
Yeah, I have a couple of people at work were like, "Hey, are you doing all right?"
Yeah, I got a couple of messages from friends that are just like, we haven't talked in like a month or so. They're like, "Hey, are you guys okay up there?" I'm like, "Of course I'm okay. I knew this was coming and prepped on my house."
So yeah, we're going to talk about a horror game today. Before we get into it, a little bit of housekeeping as always. You can find us online, chips-and-bits.com. We're also on Twitter. That's just at chipsnbits. Facebook's the same, at chipsnbits. Patreon's different though. Patreon is patreon.com/chipsandbits.
A little different.
It's a little bit different. So yeah, we're going to talk this month about the new Resident Evil 8, also known as Resident Evil Village.
It's Resident Evil number 8. It is not titled Resident Evil 8.
Right, I know. They came up with the name Village because Village has 8, the Roman numeral 8 in it.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, that's a village.
Absolutely. That's how they came up with it.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine.
I can tell because every time you see the words, they outline the Roman numeral 8 in the village. So that's how I know.
Okay.
So let's dive right into it, Kenny. Who wore it best?
Wait. I need to do the title. Our sound stuff.
Sorry.
Yeah. How about we stop and let me play this fucking song and then we'll get to this goddamn podcast, okay?
And we're back. What was with the weird staticky sound in there today?
There wasn't a weird staticky sound.
Maybe it's just me.
I think we're having connectivity issues, but don't worry. Our podcast recording is straight from source. It's just our other things that may have issues.
Yeah.
The live stream's going to have all the issues. I'm sorry. We're doing it live.
I want to start with a really important question that I need your particular opinion on, Kenny.
Okay.
What was better? Giant wasp nest spider vagina mom. Or giant zombie baby slug.
You mean baby?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I loved both of them equally for their own thing. I mean, to be fair, giant wasp vagina mom from Resident Evil 7, which is what you're referring to, was more of an action-oriented, like a chase. Baby was very slow and dark and very moody. And I just want to talk about why I love this game. It's like such a fun B movie to play through. Even the plot is just so bad, but it's so fun. Like I like everything's so well designed. Like it's like, but it's Resident Evil, so of course, like it went off the rails right around I think 5 is when it just like went to fucking like essentially werewolves are in this, and the reason they're crazy is because of a virus. You know, everyone, it's a virus that allows for all this mythical elements. Like it's such crappy storytelling, which at this point is like what makes it fun. It's like why people go and see Fast and Furious movies, right? It's just like there's certain elements of it that you're just like, this is hilarious, what they've decided to do. But I actually thought that this game was a really well polished experience. It definitely had some drag points. Again, towards the end, like the 7 did, but I felt like it was a much more. The problem with 7 is like it kind of farted out right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was one of our big complaint about 7. But I thought Village, while it didn't go as strong in the end, it was at least like concise and like the factory being the longest pain point, I think. And it was always like interesting and like there was always like fun things to see and ridiculous monsters, and it was challenging enough at certain points. There's a couple of bullet sponges. Woo! Getting my yawn on. But it's just so like fun. The world, the setting, the different areas, even fucking frog guy, the giant fish dude, who was like a shitty fight, but like it was cool. Like it was a compelling tight little game that I just really thought was like playing a fun B movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you all the way on the story, except if I have to sort of level a complaint. The main complaint I have is that I really enjoyed the campiness, the continued campiness in this game from the previous ones, all the way up until the end of this, where they tried to sort of make the story something. Like they tried to explain, for example, why you can always just cut off your limbs and stick them back onto your body, which up until then you'd just been like, yeah, sure, that seems believable. And It had been really funny, right? That you could just like pour water on yourself and just heal all of your wounds. And then, at the end of this one, they try and like have that make sense. And it doesn't, no matter what they say. But I thought that the attempt to explain it sort of like dumbed down that aspect of the campiness for me. I wish they would have just left it campy and not tried to explain it away.
100%. And if they had just left it campy, it wouldn't have been a B movie. It would have just but because it had that ridiculous resolution at the end where you find out, and this is a big spoiler for both 7 and 8, that you've been playing as a zombie the entire time.
Not just any zombie. You're made of mold.
Yeah, you made a mold family too, and it's so ridiculous. And it's like it sort of tries to add gravitas to a game that like the gravitas is in like the areas and the places you fight. Like it's in the design of the world. And if they had just gone full like camp like Ash, in Army of the Dead. Versus like the initial Evil Dead, like the first movie. I agree that it would have been a better ending if they had if he had just died and they had just let him die or something like that. But it was I do agree that them trying to explain it was just the dumbest thing. I also saw this really, really one of my favorite parts of the story, and I have to discuss this because it's such a bad story, but it's so fun in its campiness. Like it's so stupid. Again, part of why I actually loved it, because at this point, if you're playing a Resident Evil game, you're playing it for stupid stories. Like there's no, you're not playing this like Horizon, where you're just like a reveal like makes you look at awe at everything you saw before. One of my favorite things is like in the beginning, Chris Redfield, who is a main character throughout the series, shows up and just fucking murders your wife, and then doesn't really say anything about it until like near the end of the game when you find out why he did that. And I saw this thing on Reddit that was just like Resident Evil, Resident Evil 8. And then it was like 8-9 hours. And then it said Resident Evil if Chris just explained what happened, and it was like 1 hour.
So the other hilarious part about that whole aspect of the story is that you also don't find out anything about your wife in the sense as to what. So in the beginning of the game, they set up the story so that you really, as this character, you really care about your wife and your baby, like their safety. You got them out of the old one, and you're really concerned and you love them dearly.
Especially if you played the last game too. Like there's still some gravitas to that whole interaction.
Yeah, but the first half an hour of the game, you spend sort of experiencing the story with with your wife and your baby, and they don't make the character of your wife in like I don't know why he would enjoy being around his wife. Like she's terrible to him. She's like just nagging about all the stuff that he's doing the whole time. They don't make you like his wife in the beginning, and then she gets killed, and you won't find out until hours later why it makes sense, because it wasn't really your wife,
and she didn't have the history that she didn't have the knowledge.
But looking back on it, it was hilarious because you go on this huge
revenge. An asshole.
Yeah, you go on this huge revenge quest, and it was like, man, you're going to a lot of effort for like someone that just really didn't seem like they liked you very much.
It's not a revenge quest.
Nice to you.
It's not a revenge quest. It's a baby quest.
Right.
It's Labyrinth. It's essentially also, Labyrinth. I think David Bowie's even in this one.
He's not.
she is in there, and she shows up as like a weird twist at the end where she's like, she's been alive the whole time. Which makes no sense considering everyone's modus operandi in this game. They're all murderers.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where they didn't have to make it so blatantly obvious that it wasn't your wife. They could have just given some subtle hints and still made it seem like, that's weird. My wife is acting kind of funny. Instead of like, man, my wife is a terrible person. She's being terrible to me, to our baby. She's just not cool. And then hours later, you're like, oh, that wasn't his wife. Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, in that first thing, that first area, when you load up the game, you are playing Resident Evil, so the first thing you think of is you're in a nice house setting. You're like, all right, they're either going to kill the baby or the wife. One of these things is going to happen. And so they kill the wife, and then they take the baby, and it turns out the wife was a mutant, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Did you get one thing I did think was interesting was that they connected the history of the city, which kind of didn't make sense when you're playing through it because it seems so old, versus Umbrella, which is Raccoon City, the Resident Evil stuff, the mainline stuff.
Yeah, I thought the best twist was when you were in the weird lady's lab at the very end, and you just happened to pick up this document that mentions that the person who started Umbrella, they were they knew each other. Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's so crazy. They just threw it in there like it was just a secondary plot point.
Yeah, and that the Umbrella stamp and stuff comes from the area. That was pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was a B-movie story. They tried to make serious, like they always try to do at the end. But I thought it was really that was 3 points in the game where the story really tried to jump in. The rest of it is just going to Disneyland worlds. You just go from Castle Land, Vampire Land to Fishland to Babyland, Toontown, as I believe they call it.
And I mean, the game looks so cool. It doesn't just look good from a polish standpoint, but just everything has a really well established vibe, and each area there's some cohesiveness between all the different areas. But to Kenny's point, they all have their own unique vibe as well. And I thought they did a really good job of switching context there and making each area feel very unique. And it just looks great. It's awesome to be in the environments.
And they kind of each have their own gameplay actually too, which is really, really cool. The first place you go is more traditional, which is Castle. It's now a meme, but Castle Dimitrescu
or something,
which is very much a traditional Resident Evil, the mansion in 7 or in 2, or where you're going around unlocking weird corridors and being chased by people, large women. There was a meme actually about that there are tall women. No, she's large. She's large in size.
Large and tall. Yes.
Yeah. There was a meme about the original Resident Evil having less polygons than Lady Dimitrescu's ass, which they showed the polygon map of the butt, and it was pretty funny. Just to think about how far we've come. Matt,
I'll tell you how far we haven't come though. I'll tell you how far we haven't come.
Okay.
I absolutely, with this game, had the same problem I had with 7, although because this is a newer game, the problem was more severe for me in the sense that I still really feel like when I play Capcom games, the control, the feel of actually playing the game doesn't feel modern enough to me. they're trying to add these things in, like the shaky cam movement when you're walking, and sort of just like the sort of slowness and sluggishness of the control, and the difference between walking and running, and how there really isn't one. There's just all these, like, what I consider to just be expected behaviors and polishes and feels of a game and I guess I can't quite put it into very good words, other than it just feels old, and not in a great way. It's kind of like tedious to interact with the controls. Menus the same way. Like, you hit the menu button and it loads, and it kind of just feels slow and clunky. So that was like my biggest gripe with the game, was that I always just felt like I was sort of trudging through things. And it worked for one thing it had sort of like the opposite positive effect on was that it did have this way of sort of lulling you into a sense of confidence, and then they'd throw like fast zombies at you and you'd be like, oh, good. Like, it did increase the tension. And so if that was the point and they were doing that on purpose, that part, it's good. But when you're out in the open and sort of walking between areas, it did just feel like sometimes it just took a long time to do things and get from place to place. And I didn't really like that.
I can't imagine any games where it takes a long time to get from place to place being a blocker, and how you enjoy it.
Me neither.
Did you like this game?
Yeah, I mean, I really did. I had a really good time playing it.
The reason, so we weren't going to take this game on, and then the reviews came in, and turns out I just love Resident Evil no matter the context, because I've been playing 3 too. I just love it. It's just like one of those, it's like Assassin's Creed, like, it's just candy games for me, because there's not a lot of value to it. There is an ongoing storyline, but it's so stupid. It's just so dumb. But like, after 7, it didn't seem like you would be super interested unless there was because the problem with 7 was the latter half of it really, like the boat and stuff, was just nonsense. It was just like all the mechanics that you talked about hating, like you had to use them all to trudge slowly through this uninteresting ship.
Yeah.
But this one, I thought, like, since they were like different worlds and like different areas, it was just so compelling. And more importantly, it's brief. It's a very short Resident Evil game. And I liked how efficient it was to most degrees with time, and that each area was like its own unique thing. I thought you would really find that appealing. So that's why eventually, I decided to recommend it. I thought the boss battles in this game were super compelling. They were challenging. Heisenberg's was kind of stupid, but the rest were like pretty interesting. And like, it was the right amount of challenge versus progress. And just like reward of like visuals and, high concept battles and stuff.
Yeah, I might surprise you here in telling you that I think I still enjoyed the first half of Resident Evil 7 more. And here's why. The best part, like the part that I enjoyed the most of this game, was the house of the creepy doll lady.
Yeah.
Which includes giant zombie baby slug. That's one of the greater sequences too. So what sort of felt like it was missing from 7, like in 7, they did this really good job, at least in the beginning, of really making you feel tense all the time. Like, you were always low on ammo, and you were always moving slowly, and there was something chasing you, and you were scared to look around almost every corner in 7.
Right.
And whether you like that or not, they did a really great job at that, and it added to this sense of like dread and stress every time you were playing the game. Yeah. Which seemed like a really interesting vibe and something I hadn't really enjoyed in quite a while. And then they just lost that at the end. It's like it just kind of goes off the rails halfway through 7, and you don't get that anymore. Here, even though I really, really loved all the things that we're talking about so far, the different environments, the areas, sort of like the pace of the action, the boss fights, all that was great. But I do sort of feel like there was a lot more openness to this. The areas felt a lot more open environment, and this game isn't really well suited for like an exploratory game, like going and finding the things to pick up. It's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't feel very modern in this game. It feels like I got to look for the arrow and then get my camera right over the thing and then hit A, and sometimes I got to duck. It's kind of kludgy. So that's why I like that part in this game. The only downside was, of all of the areas in the game, that was probably the quickest and the shortest. Like, you zip through that house with the baby in like 15 minutes, it seemed like, and then you were done. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. I thought there was a lot of great stuff in it, and I definitely enjoyed it. If I look at it as sort of just like a fun roller coaster, it did all those things and hit all those boxes. But I did find myself still clamoring for running out of ammo, like just feeling stressed and like creeped out and scared, like I was gonna die. And I didn't really get that tenseness throughout this game almost ever.
Oh, I mean, this was definitely an action game more than a horror game.
Yeah,
Like by far. Like there's no question. And it's in the design. Like this is a shooter more than it
yeah,
is like Resident Evil 7 tried to like bridge the gap. Like it had the horror element, and it was a creepy ass house. There's
yeah.
nothing really creepy in here. You get chased by the lady. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But she's more of a spectacle. Like she's a sight to see, and not creepy in any way. Just like spectacular in her design. It I mean, I knew that going in, the polish of the experience would be overall better. I figured that everyone likes the dollhouse.
Yeah, it's great.
It's pretty good. Well, it has the best puzzles in the game, which I think is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and it's just the most like thematically, it's the most
It's the moodiest.
reminiscent. Yeah, like there's times when like the lights go completely out, or it's everything's bathed in red, or you can't like your vision's obscured, or you have to run from place to place, but you can't remember where you get like, and they change which doors locked and unlock, and so you go away you expect, and then you're stuck, and you have to turn around, and there's a monster there. I mean, it just did a much better job of just making me feel like I was playing a scary Resident Evil game.
Yeah, and I don't think this game's goal was to scare you. I like versus
I don't think
like
so either.
7. I think it was to like be a pretty compelling like B movie action thing. Like it felt very much like as like 2 complements 4. Like 4 is the one with Leon and was very much more action oriented. Like 7 was more a callback to like 2 and 1, and this is more of a callback to like 4 and 5. Like it's more action driven. Except the boss and the like, I think one of my favorite scenes that is not you walking around is when all the different like lords are gathered to meet with the final boss. What's her name? Her design
Miranda.
is spectacular. Like
Mother Miranda,
and her boss fight is challenging. I played this on hard, and I ran out of ammo quite a bit.
I did not. I had so much ammo up until I want to say like the last quarter of the game, and then as soon as you start running into these enemies that I literally thought they were unbeatable. Like I threw all of my ammo, like everything I had.
Is this the
all
factory
of my
enemies?
No, it's the Gravedigger guys, like the guys with the big hammers that protect the treasures.
Oh, those fucking guys.
Yeah, I mean, like I literally thought
3 of them
they were
really
unbeatable. Yeah, I thought they were unbeatable. I emptied ammo into them twice on different occasions before figuring out just how specific you need to get in headshotting them. But yeah, I mean, like there's like the last quarter of the game where I just felt like I was completely out of ammo all the time, and there wasn't a way to get it. Like you couldn't buy it. I couldn't find things to craft it. I wasn't picking it up. And that wasn't the case for the first 3 quarters. The first 3 quarters, I just had so much ammo, it didn't even matter.
Yeah, I would say hard, I didn't have much ammo most of the time. But that's like the thing, right? I chose that level. But that being said, the same problem happened to me towards the end, where you're just like, these guys now require very specific hits. You've wasted all your ammo killing the fucking fish guy. But
your knife is useless, so good luck with that.
There was a couple cool like mechanics. I really like their upgrade mechanics. I love the Duke. The Duke is the merchant, which is kind of a classic now, because it was in Resident Evil 4 there was the merchant, but this one is just amazing and so like weird and unexplained. Like that's really fun stuff in Resident Evil when they introduce just these weird characters that just exist. And it was great. I thought that the upgrade mechanics were good. I do agree with you that the movement and like especially finding items was a really great description. Like literally having to like, you can't highlight items. You like have to point your camera at the right spot. And so I would spend a lot of time in the maps. Oh man, I'm so yawny. This is so bad. Uh, I've just been playing Returnal a lot. Uh, there's the maps will like be red, like the buildings will be red until you find everything. They'll turn blue.
Yep.
I spent a lot of extra time just looking for shit to turn those blue.
Yeah, and the funny thing was is that 50% of the time it was a single gem hidden in the ceiling.
Yeah, those are so annoying.
But the other half of the time, it was a piece of ammo on the floor right next to where you were standing, and you just had spun around so many times and didn't kneel. Then it was like right there, and you could not find it because you were looking for something obscure, but it was in plain sight.
There was one ridiculous one where like a gem was hidden on a guitar in the ceiling.
Yeah, I found that one pretty easy, but yes.
Well, but I do like what they did with how different you would unlock different treasures with like wheels or things that you get similar to how you would unlock areas in other games, and you do in this one. And then there's combination items, which I really appreciated because it like gives you the warning, which is great because some games don't do that because they're assholes. And then like when you find it all and you get the big cash prize, it's actually like super fun little mechanic. I really enjoyed that. And the food thing was fantastic.
That was weird. That was so weird.
Like the weird hunting site game. Like it was if it was more involved, it would have been annoying. But because it was kind of like along the way, and the fish were the most obnoxious. Like
that's the thing that bothered me was that so many of the fish. Because I looked this up afterwards because I was just like, where were the fish? So many of the fish that you needed to find were in areas that once you got out of them, you can't get back to them.
No, and you can get to all the areas with fish.
No, you can't. I looked it up.
Which
like you could go through it again. There's at least 3 areas that are within the Castle Demi, whatever the.
The one place you can't go back to.
The one place you can't go back to. And you don't realize that there's a hunting mechanic until you kind of make it back to the village the first time and see the pigs, and the chickens. And so past that point, I was just like, where are all these? And you needed fish to unlock about half of the cool upgrades.
That's true. I had more than enough fish at the end, though, because if you go to the windmill, there's some fish in there.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a whole meat section at the back.
What else? Oh, man, the voice acting in this game, so bad. It's just terrible. It's especially your character.
Ethan's the worst.
Voice acting is so bad.
I thought Mother Miranda and Lady Dimitrescu was good. It was really hard to understand the fish guy, so it's hard to tell whether it's bad voice acting or not, but it got the point. Heisenberg was really hit or miss for me. I really loved the character of his voice, like the way it sounded, but it was hard to tell if, like, I don't know, like, I didn't think it was bad. It was just weird. It just sounded different. But Ethan, and they were bad in the first game. They were bad in 7 too. Ethan's so bad. He's just like, he's so cheesy, but that, like, to me is part of the B moviness of it, right?
Kind of. I think like it's a fine line. It's a fine line where I felt some of the other characters, like, to me, Chris Redfield, like how they did Chris Redfield, like that's pretty B. He's the Marine. Yeah. And it's fine. It's, same with all the ladies in the castle. Like all the ladies in the castle are just overblown, sort of like they're just super campy.
That was cool. The fish, I forgot about fish guy. The flies. That was
super
cool.
Campy. The creepy doll lady, super campy. But then the main 2 that I thought just couldn't hit it were your character, who you hear a lot of, and Heisenberg. Heisenberg is like, think of the worst Nicolas Cage movies.
Nicolas Cage is a good one.
With the worst Nicolas Cage acting, like Face Off, just anything like, that's Heisenberg. And then he turns into basically like a huge Nicolas Cage machine at the end, and you have to like kill the Nicolas Cage machine. That was what it seemed like. So they just like sort of jumped the shark there with me. And every time I heard them talk, I was just like, ugh, just stop talking.
Heisenberg was like I said, like he was hard to, I can't really tell you whether I liked it or not. I really liked the character of it, but then it sounded like it didn't belong in a video game, or at least this video game for sure. I don't know what it was. Like, the design of him was really cool. But yeah, I agree with that. He was essentially Magneto.
Yeah, it's just, oh yeah. And then the Duke, as you mentioned, I thought the Duke was probably the best. Like the Duke.
Oh, the Duke's great.
Just the way he looks, he's just disgusting looking, and he's creepy, but he's also helpful. He just covers all the boxes, and his voice is really good.
And in the end, he helps you because he's pissed off he lost out his money because of the main antagonist. I love that. I love that his whole thing's like, she ruined my income line.
Yeah,
go kill her.
It's great.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, I think this game is totally fun to play.
Yeah,
like it's definitely worth playing. You only have to experience it once, so you can wait till it shows up on Game Pass or something. But it's really enjoyable, and every area sort of gives you some new experience. Some not as good as not as good as other, but I think it's a lot more consistent than 7 is in terms of like.
Oh yes, for sure.
Like how you feel, even though it doesn't reach the height of the house in the beginning of 7. I do.
Yeah, there's not as many valleys to the peaks in this one, and yeah, even though the peak's not as high from start to finish, it's a lot more enjoyable overall.
Yeah.
Than 7 was. And to Kenny's point, like it is a quick. Like I think I was barely 10 hours playthrough, and I tried to do absolutely everything I could when I played through it. That said, since you are sort of, there are still some times where the game methodically slows you down and you have to sort of like creep through some areas. It did feel like it was long. Like it didn't feel like it was short. It didn't feel like it was only 10 hours. Like I felt like it was a pretty cohesive game. Like I felt like I played a whole game from start to finish. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, it was like a super polished, nice experience. It was like a candy bar of a video game. Like, I guess a candy bar with like sometimes almonds in it, and you're just like, oh, almonds, but it's
like
still
a moldy candy bar,
like a moldy candy bar,
a candy bar made of mold.
Every once in a while, the candy bar talks and says like, "Oh, my daughter," and not even that good.
Right.
But it's super fun. I actually hope they continue making. I mean, it seems like they set up the sequel at the end there, and this game did gangbusters. So I hope they continue making this kind of line of game. It'll be hard to see how they usually when they change the formula, like I don't know where they could go, but because they really kind of outdid themselves in terms of like style and characters here. So,
but yes, the father's story has ended.
The father's story has ended. That's so funny.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this month's episode of the Chips and Bits podcast. Thanks for joining us as always. We appreciate each and every one of you and hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back in a month's time for those of you who are not patrons to talk about Returnal. For those of you who are patrons, we'll see you in a couple of weeks on the side quest episode. I've been your host this month, Matthew Anderson. With me as always,
Kenny Myers.
And we'll see you again soon.
Bye.